In a hall filled with 500 wolves, the Luna stood invisible. Her mate, the Alpha, looked at another woman and called her children his own. That was the night she left everything behind. No pack, no title, no mate. Just a broken heart and a frozen forest, until she found a body buried in the snow, cold, still, dead. And she made one fatal mistake. She chose to save him. The torches burned gold across the great hall. 500 wolves, not one looked at her. Seraphine stood beside her mate at the front of the gathering, spine straight, hands folded, expression carved from composure. Her silver dress caught the firelight. She looked like a queen. She felt like a ghost. Alpha Caden stood 3 steps ahead of her. He always stood 3 steps ahead of her. The crowd parted. Lyra walked in from the east corridor. She wore no formal dress, only a simple wrap that could not conceal what it tried to. She carried a child on each hip, twin boys, dark-haired, wide-eyed, clutching her neck with both fists. Caden's face changed. Not dramatically. Nothing as honest as joy, just a softening, a recognition, the way a man looks at the thing he has already chosen. "Lyra," his voice was warm, "come forward." She obeyed. The crowd parted for her too, but not the way they parted for Seraphine. For Seraphine, they moved aside. For Lyra, they leaned in. An elder woman touched Lyra's arm. A warrior nodded at the children. A mother in the crowd smiled. Seraphine counted the smiles. It was something to do. Caden stepped toward the children. He crouched. The elder child reached for him, and Caden took the small hand without hesitation, without formality, without the careful, measured distance he had maintained with Seraphine for 3 years. Someone behind her whispered. She didn't catch the words. She caught the tone. Poor thing. Caden finally looked back at her. His eyes were already apologizing, that polished, practiced apology that explained nothing and excused everything. "Seraphine, you remember Lyra?" A sentence shaped like a question that was not a question, a formality dressed as courtesy. "Of course," she said. Her voice didn't shake. She had trained it not to. The gathering continued. Announcements, territory lines, pack business. Seraphine stood in her place, composed and invisible, while the crowd around her rearranged its loyalties without ceremony. An elder woman caught her eye once, held it a beat too long, then looked away. That was the cruelest part. Not malice, just the weight of everyone knowing and no one saying, and all of them choosing silence because silence was easier than truth. That night, she packed one bag. Slowly, deliberately, the way a person packs when they are not planning to return. Only what was hers before. Nothing he had given her. Nothing that would remind her she had once believed in something. She left no note. Notes required explanations, and she had no more words to spend on this place. She closed the door behind her without sound. The night was cold. The forest ahead was dark. She walked into it alone. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she could not survive another day of being looked through by people who once called her Luna. 3 weeks north. 2 weeks of silence. The cabin sat at the edge of nothing. A single room, a stone hearth, walls chinked with pine resin and old mud. It smelled of cold and cedar. She had found it abandoned, half collapsed, and had spent her first 4 days making it survivable. It was not comfortable. That was fine. She didn't need comfort. She needed to stop feeling. She heard nothing before she saw him. No footsteps, no snap of branch. The snow simply had him in it, enormous, motionless, face down at the base of a black spruce 30 meters from her cabin door. She stopped walking. The snow was still falling, soft, indifferent. It had already begun to cover him,
a fine layer across his shoulders, across the back of one outstretched hand, as though the forest had decided he was ground now. She told herself to go back inside. She walked toward him instead. He was massive, not in the way soldiers were massive, not trained thickness layered over a human frame. This was something older. His shoulders were wrong, his hands were wrong. Even unconscious, even half buried in snow, he had a presence that pressed against the air around him like a sound just below hearing. She crouched, pressed 2 fingers to the side of his neck.
Nothing. She held very still, counted to 10, pressed harder. Nothing. The cold was thorough. He had been out here a long time. She sat back on her heels and looked at him for a moment, this enormous, dead stranger in the snow. The quiet around him felt wrong in a way she couldn't name. Too complete, like the forest was waiting. "No one deserves to die alone," she said. She wasn't speaking to him, she was speaking to herself, maybe, or to the trees, or to the particular cruelty of strangers dying unnamed in silence. Even a stranger deserves warmth. She pulled her coat off, laid it over him. The cold hit her immediately, sharp and total. She reached for his arm, beginning to calculate the physics of moving 250 pounds of dead weight through 30 centimeters of snow. And then he coughed. Violent, wet, like something breaking loose from deep inside a chest that had stopped working. His entire body convulsed with it, one seizing inhale, enormous and desperate, like a man surfacing from black water. Then silence again. Then breathing, ragged, labored, but breathing. She had not moved. She was still crouched beside him, one hand on his arm, coat half draped across his back. His fingers, those enormous, half-frozen fingers, twitched once against the snow. The dead man was not dead, and now she had to decide what to do with him.
He was alive. He was also completely unconscious and approximately the size of a war horse. She tried to roll him first, got him onto his side, lost her footing on the ice beneath the snow, and went down hard on one knee, pain shooting up her thigh. She got up. She tried again. By the time she had him on his back, she was sweating despite the cold, breathing in short, visible bursts. Her hands were already raw. She grabbed his arms above the wrists, the only grip she could manage, and pulled. He moved perhaps half a meter. "Okay," she said aloud. Not encouragement, just acknowledgement. "Okay, this is what is happening. We continue." She pulled again. It took 40 minutes to get him inside. She fell twice more, lost him once when her grip slipped, watched him slide back 2 meters down the slight incline toward the trees, and had to start again. The cold had settled into her fingers by then, that particular numbness that isn't painless, it's pain that has given up on being felt properly. She got the door open, she got him over the threshold, she got him to the rug in front of the hearth by increments, centimeter by centimeter, her whole body screaming. She built the fire before she did anything else. Priorities. Heat first, then him, then her. What followed was 7 days she would not remember cleanly. Impressions, mostly. Fire, the constant battle to keep the fire at the right level, hot enough to warm him, not so hot the fever burned instead of broke. Water, getting water past lips that didn't cooperate, tilting his head just so. The slow work of spoonfuls. Silence, except for his breathing, which she listened to with more attention than she had given anything in years. Too fast, too shallow, then steadying, then a long, terrible pause at 3 a.m. on the 3rd night that made her put her hand to his chest just to feel it moving, and it was, barely, but it was. She slept in the chair beside him. Not well, not long, but she slept. She changed his temperature with cold cloths when the fever spiked. She kept broth on the fire and coaxed small amounts into him twice a day.
She talked to him sometimes, not because she expected an answer, but because the silence of the cabin was beginning to sound like the silence of the great hall, and she couldn't bear that. She told him about the mountains she'd seen on her way north, about the particular shade of gray the sky turned before serious snow, about a raven that had been following her for a week, keeping its distance but never leaving. He did not respond, but on the 6th night, his hand, lying at his side, curled slowly closed, as though gripping something, as though holding on. The 7th morning. She was at the fire, adding wood, when she heard it, a shift of weight, the particular sound of a large body moving with intention. She turned. His eyes were open, not disoriented, not blinking into confusion, open and clear and focused, locked on her with the kind of attention that preceded decisions. She stood very still. He looked at her for a long moment. Then his voice came out, rough from disuse, from cold, from whatever had nearly killed him, but underneath the roughness was something else entirely, something that didn't ask. "Where are my children?"
Not, "Who are you?" Not, "Where am I?" Not even, "Thank you." Just, "Where are my children?" Spoken the way a man speaks who has never had to frame a question as a request, the way someone asks when they expect the world to answer. She kept her voice level. "I found you alone, in the snow. No one else was with you." Something moved across his face. Not fear, he didn't look like a man who permitted himself fear. Something harder than fear. A calculation. A cost. He tried to sit up. His body refused. He made it 6 inches off the ground before his arm gave and he caught himself, jaw clenched, breathing controlled, the kind of breathing that was a decision, not a reflex. "How long?" he said. 7 days. He processed this. "There is a place," he said, finally. "I need you to take me there." "You can't walk," she said. "I didn't ask about my ability to walk." She looked at him. He looked back, not unkindly, but with the absolute expectation of someone who had never been refused.
She agreed. She was not certain why. Something in the shape of his urgency told her the children were real and small and waiting in the cold. She didn't ask his name. He didn't offer it. Over the following 2 days, 2 more days while he healed faster than she had ever seen anyone heal, he gave her directions in pieces. A riverbed, a ridge marked by 2 dead birches, a hollow under a rock face she would recognize by the smell of pine smoke. She noticed things she didn't intend to notice. The way the air in the cabin felt different since he woke, heavier somehow, weighted, like the room had been rearranged without any furniture moving. His scent, impossible to ignore even past the fire smoke and winter cold. Something deep and old and forested. Something that made the wolf in her go very quiet in a way she hadn't felt in 3 years. She ignored this. On the 2nd day, he sat upright on his own. On the 3rd, he stood. He stood like a man reclaiming something that had been temporarily taken from him, not like a man recovering from near death. "You should rest more," she said. "My children have been alone too long already." She didn't argue with that. She found the hollow. The pine smoke was there, faint but real. She followed it into the rock face, and there, in the depression behind the largest stone, she stopped. An old woman sat beside a small fire, wrapped in heavy wool, watching the entrance with the patience of someone who had been watching for days. Behind her, curled together under a single blanket, 2 small children, sleeping, alive. Seraphine exhaled something she hadn't known she'd been holding. The old woman looked at her for a long, careful moment. Then her eyes moved to the massive figure standing at Seraphine's back, and the old woman did something unexpected. She bowed her head, not the way a grandmother bows to a friend, the way a subject bows to a king.
The children woke when they smelled him, not gradually, one moment asleep, the next both upright, both reaching. They scrambled past the old woman, past the fire, and collided with his legs with the full force of small bodies that had been afraid for a very long time. He went down to one knee. He gathered them both against his chest, one enormous arm around each, and held them with a completeness that Seraphine had to look away from, not because it was painful, because it was private, because it was the most honest thing she had seen in years, and it didn't belong to her. The plan had been to hand off the children and leave. The plan did not account for the fact that when he finally set them down, speaking to them quietly in a voice she hadn't heard from him yet, low and careful and unbearably gentle, the older child looked up at her. Big dark eyes, his father's stillness, a 5-year-old's complete lack of artifice. He walked over to her and put his hand in hers. Just that. No explanation, no request. He simply decided she was safe and acted accordingly, the way children do when they have nothing left to lose by trusting. She stood very still. The younger one, younger by perhaps a year, rounder, slower to move, watched his brother for a moment, then toddled over and grabbed the hem of her coat in both fists and held on. She looked down at both of them. Something in her chest broke quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, the way ice breaks in early spring, a sound you almost miss, and then the water moves.
The old woman insisted they stay the night. The children needed rest before travel. He needed more recovery than he was admitting to. The fire was warm, and the hollow was defensible. Seraphine fed the boys from the dried food she'd brought. The younger one fell asleep in her lap between one mouthful and the next, simply tipped sideways and was unconscious, one small fist still curled in her coat. She didn't move. She sat in the firelight with this sleeping child against her ribs and felt the particular silence of someone who has spent 3 years being told, not in words, but in every other possible way, that she was not enough, not the right kind, not capable of the one thing that mattered. And here was this boy, choosing her, for no reason, because she was warm and present and had fed him soup. The old woman watched from across the fire. "You have kind hands," she said quietly. Seraphine didn't answer. "He needs that," the woman continued, "more than he knows how to ask for." A pause. "Do you even know who you're helping, girl?" Before Seraphine could answer, the hairs on the back of her neck rose. The older boy, half dozing against her side, murmured something, reached for her without waking, found her hand and held it. She looked up. He was standing at the entrance to the hollow, watching her, and the air had changed again, that heaviness, that impossible weight of his presence, but this time it felt different. This time it felt like recognition. He waited until the children were asleep. Then he sat across the fire from her, and for the first time since he had opened his eyes in her cabin, he spoke without urgency. "You should know what you've gotten involved in." "I found a man dying in the snow," she said. "I don't think I got involved. I think I just made soup." Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. The suggestion of one, maybe, like a muscle remembering what smiling felt like. "My name is Kieran. I am Alpha King of the Northern Territories. 6 packs, 40,000 wolves." She looked at him across the fire. He looked back, waiting for the thing that always happened, the immediate recalibration, the subtle shift into performance, the way people rearranged themselves when they understood what he was. It didn't happen. She said, "And someone tried to kill you?" "My second," he said. "A man I treated as a brother for 15 years. He wanted the throne. He thought the children were leverage." A pause. He miscalculated. "Your mate?" The fire snapped. A branch fell. The silence between the snap and his answer was long enough to feel like weather. 3 years ago. They took her to get to me. I arrived in time to hold her hands. His voice was completely even. I have not stopped moving since.
She understood that, the physics of grief, how stillness lets it catch you, so you keep moving, because the moment you stop... The children, he said, my sons, she would have loved them completely. She never got to raise them. A long exhale. I am trying to be enough for them. You are, Seraphine said.
Not consolation, just fact. She had watched him with them. He steadied her across the fire with that stillness of his, that total, measuring attention. You didn't know any of this, he said. When you pulled me out of the snow, you didn't know my name or my rank or my enemies. You covered me with your coat and dragged me 100 meters through the snow because no one deserves to die alone, she said. He was quiet for a moment. No one has ever... He started, stopped, chose different words. I have not been helped without calculation in a very long time. She looked at him. She could see him, really see him, past the authority, past the enormity of him, a man who had been a weapon for so long he had forgotten what it felt like to be tended to. She recognized that feeling. The old woman shifted in her sleep on the far side of the hollow. And then, from outside, distant but deliberate, a wolf's call, shaped into signal. Kieran's head turned with an animal precision that had nothing human in it. His eyes went flat. They found the trail, he said. Not fear, not panic. The specific quiet of a man beginning to calculate how many people he would have to kill.
He was on his feet before the echo of the call died. 3 steps to the hollow's entrance. Listening, his whole body listening in that way that wasn't human. Tilted slightly, eyes half closed, processing frequencies she couldn't hear. How many? She asked. 4, maybe 5. He turned. They're a 1/4 mile east and they're moving fast. She was already moving, going to the children, calculating. The boys were deeply asleep. She could carry the younger one. The older would need to be woken, and a woken child could not be quiet on command, not at 5 years old, not in fear. Look at me. His voice was low and absolute. She turned. Take the boys north, 30 minutes at your pace. There is a split rock on the ridge. Wait there. I will come to you. You're not recovered, she said. I'm recovered enough. 5 against 1 when you're Seraphine. The first time he had used her name. She hadn't told him her name. I need you to take my children and run, please. The please hit differently than the commands had, because it cost him something. She could see that, the slight tension around the word, the way it came out like a door opening in a wall that had not had doors. She ran, the younger boy against her chest, still half asleep, his face pressed into her neck, the older beside her, her hand gripping his small legs working as hard as they could. Fast as you can, little wolf, she told him. Your father needs us to be fast. He ran. Behind them, sounds she was trying not to listen to, the percussion of a fight she couldn't see, impacts, one shout cut short, silence, then movement, then silence again. She found the split rock. She put the boys in the shadow of it, wrapped her body around both of them, and listened to the forest. The older boy looked up at her, his father's eyes, his mother's missing. Is Papa okay? He whispered. Yes, she said. She said it with certainty she did not entirely feel because he needed certainty. But it was not certainty she lacked. It was something else, a fear she recognized from another life, another leaving. Not fear of the men in the forest, fear that this warmth, these children, this man who had said her name like he'd been holding it, would end the same way everything else had, with her alone on one side of a door and everything she wanted on the other. Footsteps, coming from the south, one set, heavy, familiar. Kieran came around the rock looking like winter itself, bleeding from one shoulder, unhurried, already scanning for the children before he saw her face. He found them both, counted them, his body released something.
He crouched in front of the older boy. "Good run," he said quietly. "You were very fast." "She held my hand," the boy said, "the whole time." Kieran looked up at her then from his crouch, and the firelight was gone, and it was just moonlight and snow and his eyes finding hers. "I have to go back," he said. She knew. "My kingdom," he said, "my pack. I've run long enough. I need to end this." She nodded. She kept her expression even. She was very good at keeping her expression even. "I will take the boys back to the cabin," she said. "When you're ready, when it's done, you can come for them." She meant, "I will take care of them. I will not ask you to come back. I am not asking you for anything." She meant, "This is me giving you the door so you don't have to find it yourself." He looked at her for a long moment. "When it's done," he repeated. But he said it the way you say something you're deciding, not something you're agreeing to. He went back to his kingdom like a storm returning to the sea. He came through the main gates of the northern palace on foot. No announcement, no ceremony. Just the Alpha King walking back into the place that had tried to erase him, blood drying on his shoulder, eyes quiet and absolutely certain. His loyal commanders found him before he reached the throne room. His second, the man who had called himself a brother, was arrested before sunrise. By noon, it was over. By nightfall, the pack had been addressed. By the following morning, every surviving conspirator had made their choice: kneel or leave. Most kneeled. The throne room was warm. His advisors were relieved. His warriors were ready. His sons were safe. He sat on the throne he had reclaimed and looked out at the order he had restored and tried to locate the feeling that was supposed to accompany this moment: power, vindication, the satisfaction of a thing made right. He found only one thing instead: a cabin, a fire, a woman who hadn't known his name, hadn't asked what he could offer her, hadn't rearranged herself when she found out who he was, who made a simple, selfless, and honest prayer for him, who had made soup, who had talked to him in the dark about ravens and gray skies, who had run through winter with his children in her arms and said, "Your father needs us to be fast," as if his children were also hers, as if it were simply true. 3 weeks. The cabin settled into its silence like an old coat settling onto its hook. Seraphine tended the fire. She walked. She sat with the boys through their small daily dramas, the older one's stubborn insistence on doing everything himself, the younger one's complete emotional transparency, his feelings moving across his face like weather. She loved them without deciding to. That was the thing about love that no one warned you. Sometimes it didn't announce itself. Sometimes it just accumulated, small moment by small moment, until one day you looked up and it was already there, already true, and the only question was what you intended to do about it. She intended to do nothing. She was good at doing nothing. She had practice. The snow began again on a Thursday. She was standing at the window watching it fall when the older boy said with complete casualness, "Papa's coming." She looked at him. He was stacking small stones on the floor in patterns only he understood, not even looking up. "How do you know?" she asked. "I can smell him," he said simply. "He's close." She heard the footsteps 10 minutes later. Not hurried, not the stride of a man on an errand. Deliberate, the pace of someone who had thought very carefully about each step they were taking. She opened the door before he knocked. He looked different. Not weaker, not more human, not diminished, but something had been set down, the particular weight of a man in a state of emergency, always calculating, always ready. It was gone, or lowered at least, enough to see the man underneath. He looked at her, then past her at the boys, the older one already running, the younger one trying to keep up, both of them calling Papa in the tones of children who have never once doubted that their father would come back. He went down to his knees and caught them both. Then, over their heads, "I don't need an heir," he said. "I have children." She stood in the doorway. The snow was falling behind him. The fire was going at her back.
I have a kingdom, he continued. I have power. I have a throne that nobody can take from me now. A pause. And all of it, every morning I sat in that hall this past month, all of it felt like the wrong room.
She was quiet. You gave warmth to a man you believed was already dead, he said. You asked nothing for it. You didn't know my name or my rank. You covered me with your coat and dragged me through the snow because you prayed no one deserves to die alone. The younger boy had fallen asleep against his chest. The older was pressed against his side, listening with the serious attention of a child who understands more than he's supposed to. No one has ever chosen me like that, Kieran said. Not the king, not the alpha. Me. You chose me when there was nothing to choose, when I was just a man in the snow with no power and no use. His voice was even, but she could hear what it cost him. I am not asking you to come to my kingdom, he said. I'm not asking you to wear a crown or perform a role or stand 3 steps behind me and smile while I look the other way. She flinched at that. He had seen more than she thought. I'm asking if you'll let us stay, he said. In this cabin, in this silence. I want to learn what it feels like to be a place someone calls home. I want my sons to grow up knowing what warmth looks like. A breath. I want to choose you back. She stood in the doorway for a moment longer. The fire behind her, the snow in front of her, and this man kneeling in it. This man who had kingdoms and tower and 40,000 wolves and had set all of it aside to kneel in the snow outside a cabin he hadn't been invited to, looking up at her with his whole self present in a way she had stopped believing men could be. She stepped back from the door, giving him room. He came inside.
That night, the fire going, both boys asleep between them on the rug, the older on his side, one hand stretched out toward his father, the younger curled toward Seraphine, one fist still loosely holding her sleeve. Kieran reached across them and touched the back of her hand, not taking it, not claiming it, just touching it, the way you touch something you want to be careful with. She turned her hand over. He held it. Outside, the snow kept falling, indifferent and soft and covering everything, the way snow does, the way snow has always done, making everything new. In the morning, the world would be white and unwritten. She did not think about the Great Hall. She did not think about the torches or the crowd or the 3 steps she had spent 3 years standing behind someone who had already gone elsewhere. She thought, this is what beginning feels like. Not the ending of pain, not the absence of it, but pain that had finally led somewhere worth going. The fire burned low and warm. Neither of them moved. Neither of them needed to. She had spent years begging to be seen, but in the end, it wasn't the alpha who chose her. It was the man who had nothing left and still chose her anyway. Because sometimes the love you deserve only finds you after you walk away from the one that didn't.